up really from the work that we've been doing over this last sort of 9 months or so, actually trying to follow the golden thread through, because to a great extent, the golden thread as a concept has been very successful, and we've actually got many golden threads. And the result of that is that what we've actually got is in many cases a thread of information, but without it being connected to something. So what I mean by that is that in many cases, what people are doing, quite correctly, is recording an activity, let's say an inspection, and but they're not tying that back to the particular asset that was inspected. So we therefore end up with a situation where in subsequent inspections, the golden thread is not referring to the same thing. So one of the reasons this particular topic was raised in the summer was to try and address that particular aspect, and we had the initially we had it discussed in the working groups. We then ran a session at Digital Construction Week, and we've now published that the results of that, where the questions that have been or the suggestions that people have made are in the document that we've shared. What we now want to do is now turn that into something that's useful. So we've got a connection now in with Deluxe, where we can feed information back to them. But in practice, what I'm really looking to do is to see if we can put together something that is some proper guidance that we as an industry can follow. So I think that's really where we're at the moment. Is that helpful, Richard?
Yes, I think that's great. We sent out very late, the day before yesterday, I think, just sent out a query or asking you to, if you have a chance to look at the responses. Just, do you want to put the question and responses up on the screen? Okay, so let's just remember what we're talking about. How do we ensure continuity in, Jess, I'm reading, continuity and relationship of asset information throughout the asset lifetime, which George just explained to you. So let's just scroll down to the answers we've got so far. I think there are 19. I don't know if any of you had a chance to look at this. What we're trying to do for this meeting is to see what you consider to be the key three. And then we can delve deeper into those. I would imagine that between the 14, 15 of you on the call, there'll be a lot more than three. It's going to spread, but hopefully narrow it down a bit. Now, if I can start off with the response we've had in already, let me just open that up. Sorry.
So this is a sort of community event, as it were. So this is the first time we've actually done this live. Does anybody have a particular view as to how we ought to be tackling it? Okay.
Okay, well, let's start off with we've got a couple of responses back on that. Both Bex and Simon thought that answer 2, understand the information needs of end users, was one of the main priorities. So Simon, why don't you explain that to us if you're
well, the project that I'm working on, which is at the London Borough of Camden, involves the creation or selection of a platform which provides the end users, the building safety managers, with what is believed to be the data that they need in order to create building safety case reports. Whereas the building safety managers are experts in building safety, and they're not experts in databases. So it's quite difficult to match what we're able to provide the building safety managers with and what they actually need to create their reports. So what we've found is that they tend to collect a lot of the data that they need. For example, the key building information, whether it's in data sets or not, and then it's not really up to them to change around how data is managed. That they can only pass that on to somebody else. So the needs of the end users, people writing the building safety case reports, are a bit different from the needs of people who think in terms of data sets and a platform for bringing together data from different data sets, asset data, safety data, repairs data, etc. So I think we're just getting to know what the building safety managers need from data management tools at the moment.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. Thank you. Does anybody have any view on that themselves, or any personal experience where this would actually come into play?
Richard, I mean, only to say that I kind of totally agree with that, and I think it reminds me of a conversation I had kind of 10 years ago, I think, at an Autodesk University event where Autodesk was kind of talking about the operational phase of projects, and it kind of boiled down to exactly what was just said there, that it's about the skill set, I think, of the end users as well. Obviously, their requirements, but also how tooled up are they? How savvy are they with, entering data? What access to mobile platforms have they got? And that really dictates how you're going to address the issue, isn't it? Because this is only as strong as the weakest link, and that very, very often is the weakest link, that data is collected through a kind of, I want to say disorganized, but unconnected methods. So it could be Excel, it could be notes on someone's phone, it could be on an iPad. So it seems to me that problem's always been around, and I'm kind of wondering, I don't know, is it that it's not their responsibility? And I think that's what Simon was kind of getting at. So do we have to kind of, how do you get people to change behavior? And it's difficult, isn't it? I mean, do you tie it to their deliverables? i.e., like in the same way that the design industry has kind of gone through this, suddenly with common data environments over the last 10 years, that 10 years ago common data environments were kind of a nice to have, and now they're an essential, and all design team members have kind of got used to getting information through those gateways, meeting a minimum standard, and the reason for that is because essentially our clients, our paymaster, dictates that that's what will happen, and if we don't do that, then we don't get paid. And I'm just kind of wondering whether there's some kind of
what you're saying, you're talking about organization, methodology, and touching on competence as well, aren't you, really?
Well, yeah,
and also contractual commitment as well. I think that's part of it as well, isn't it, Joe? It's what people are, because at the end of the day, people will do what they're paid to do.
Exactly.
Yeah, or they'll do what they need to do to avoid being penalised. So it's that sort of clarity that is probably needed.
Yeah, you're not really yeah, I think this is that's quite interesting actually, because you're not the new regime, it almost discourages you to over deliver, because if you're over delivering on what you're contractually bound to do or on what your job role is, then you're kind of taking a risk, aren't you?
Definitely, yeah.
Paula, I'm sorry, I missed somebody else. I'll come back to you.
Yeah, Dave Williams put his hand up first.
Dave, sorry, I can't see it on my screen because it's shared.
Oh, that's okay, mate. No problems. No, the only thing I was going to add to that discussion is it's not just data, it's documents as well. And often those get overlooked because we, are worried about critical data type information. It's the affiliated documents, be them certificates or the safety case report itself, which is a document. And it's how we make sure that that is, available, easy to find, linked in some way to the, corresponding data. And I think that often gets missed because of the fact that we have a sort of tunnel vision about raw data in databases or, Excel spreadsheets, etc.
Paula.
Hi all. The conversation piqued my interest when we talked about over delivering, because actually what I tell my team or say to my team is this has just given us a framework to do what we should have been doing all along, and now we're just being visibly held to account for doing what we should have been doing under the building regs. So I know I'm a bit oversimplifying. In terms of data sets, just going back to Dave's point quickly, we want to get to a place where everything's held digitally anyway. We don't have documents flying around left, right and centre uncontrolled, and that's certainly where we all need to be. But for me, going back to the question, the question 3, how do we ensure continuity? It's a process diagram. And I do a lot of work with Paul McSorley from Mace, as you know, George.
Yeah.
And we put together or collectively a process diagram that you almost have to spell out what has to be done by who, at what stage, and how you're and proving that person is competent. And it can start off as a very simple framework that we can all feed into. You can base it on the REBA work stages if you want, or the BISRIA work stages, but some gateways that take the emotion out of it and drive this consistency in what we're going to get a predictable outcome at the end of each stage. And that's what I'm trying to do.
I think the other thing with that, Paula, is the handshake between what information is being produced, who's receiving it, and has that baton been properly handed over. And I think that's a real issue at the moment. What people are doing is they're producing information because they've got a requirement to do so. The information hasn't been probably verified, and the person that's receiving it may well not have the tools and the competence to be able to check it, and that's where the break comes in. And I think one of the most useful things I think has come out of the new regulations is that the client now, this is the amendments to Regulation 38 that basically require the client or the responsible person, which is typically the client, the responsible person to actually confirm explicitly that they've received the fire safety information that they need to, or the information they need to run the building safely. Now, that's new. And I think it's going to be a real interesting challenge for most client organizations because they're not familiar with having to do that. And I think that's encouraging, really.
And that's our experience, George, as well, that we're inheriting a pack of information that hasn't gone through that rigor because it's not, the right people aren't there qualified to be able to assess it correctly. So we're on the back foot before we even start as a main contractor, having to fill in the gaps, not just with fire, as you know, with the structural integrity and user safety. And it impacts the program already. So absolutely, I agree with that handshake piece. So it should be, there should almost be a checklist. It could be as simple as that.
Yes. Sean.
Hello. Yes, I'm Sean Holliday. I'm from A2 Dominion, long-time information practitioner. Just a few weeks in the role at A2 Dominion as the asset and component manager. So a lot of this is familiar, but also kind of new. Some of the topics that you're grappling with here, I'm kind of grappling with myself. And I think in relation to kind of understanding the information needs of end users, I think technology has quite a lot to play in trying to make information relatable, consumable, and relevant at the point of use. And I think the challenges for organisations now is, or perhaps not right now, but longer term, is how do you make your asset information available to those people that are working on behalf of your organisations at the point of use, those people who are kind of handling that equipment on a day-to-day basis, who are closest to the information, who are probably most qualified to verify and validate and collect that information whilst they're handling that equipment. So I think technology has the ability to do that, and we see that every day in good, well-designed products. And I think we can learn lessons from those areas in terms of technology. The other area that you're kind of talking about around process is that data doesn't exist, doesn't have relevance outside of process. And so I've been looking at processes and I've been thinking about how it would be possible to take each of your data items and pin it to a process so that you understand what its relevance is to the organization. If you can't pin a data item to a process, then you have to kind of question whether you should be collecting it and managing it at all.
Yeah, so one of the ways in which we've been trying to do that, Sean, is to look at things from an information requirement perspective, so that you can explicitly identify what information each party in the flow needs, and therefore and also who's responsible for providing it, and has it been provided, and all those sorts of things. So the project asset information requirements and the project information requirements is something that I think has got to have a much greater emphasis. And I was in a NEMA meeting on, which is the UK BIM Alliance. I don't know if you know that, but okay. I was in a NEMA meeting on Friday. Oh, sorry, on Monday, and the HSE were Gordon Crick from the HSE was on there, and he was saying that project information requirements, they've now recognised that's a vital area, which was music to my ears because I've been banging on about it for a long time. Because I think it's the fundamental thing that we need to identify, because otherwise people are going to be completely overwhelmed with too much data, too much information, and you can't see the wood for the trees. We need to identify what's important. If you look at it from a COBie perspective, which I think probably is the best sort of schema to really work with around this, is there's a lot of the attributes in the base COBie that for a lot of asset types just aren't needed, like color and shape and things like that. But they are needed for certain items. So it's a matter of, I think as client organizations, being a little bit more understanding of what needs to be done
So
to require these things.
I mean, that's quite interesting. So some of the thoughts I've had around the COBie and some of those attributes is to think about whether a data item is regulatory mandatory, whether it's system mandatory, whether it's business mandatory, or just a nice to have because it supports a process elsewhere. And I think if you kind of start to think about things, you can prioritize how you gather that data around those priorities. And that might well influence how you go about filling out your COBie information and how you prioritize filling those gaps, because clearly there's an enormous amount of information in the existing portfolio that we just can't necessarily get to. So how do we prioritize gathering that? Because it clearly can't be done in one go, particularly as we're still learning, I guess, what it is that we need to gather to meet these requirements. And so that has to be built into your BAU day-to-day activity so that you can build it up over time.
Yeah, we've done quite a lot of work, which I'd be happy to share with anybody on the group that's interested around RACI. Are you familiar with RACI?
Yeah.
So we've gone through the information sets. We've actually over the last couple of years we've gone through and done a lot of work around certain key asset types. There are 12 that we've focused on, things like fire doors, sprinklers, emergency lighting, cavity barriers and things like that, to actually identify what data is actually useful for different purposes, for design, installation, maintenance, etc. So they're all on the BIM for Housing website. But what might be useful is to just run through those with you, because I think that's the way forward to be able to exactly what you've just said there. Why are we actually collecting this information? Who's going to use it? And if nobody's going to use it, then and also what form is it in? As Dave was saying earlier, it may be that we want. I'm passionately interested in all of the data being machine readable, but that's a big topic to try and get on the top of. So therefore, having data sheets for products that are there as PDFs, as long as it's the right data sheet for that particular product that's put in that particular instance, then that's a gradual way of us getting to where we need to get to.
Yes.
I want to bring in Assumpta. Actually, Assumpta, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Hi there. You're
Hello.
welcome.
Thank
I think
you.
it's your first meeting. You're with Metropolitan.
Yes, I am.
So are you getting all the information you need? You're in charge of building safety, aren't you?
Yes, they don't have a system in place yet. So they're still trying, because what happens is you get all the information from the developers, but there's like people just work in silos. So it's how we're trying to collect that information now, which is very difficult. So you still have like different departments just gathering this information, not knowing what to do with it, or not getting all the information that they need.
So it's as George was saying.
Yeah. So
yeah,
I think that's the point, isn't it, Assumpta? If we can actually prescriptively say what information do we need, and really importantly, what we don't need, then it means that you can then have a way of validating and verifying that you've got what you need. Dave Williams,
yes,
your hand's still up, by the way.
Yeah, sorry. So what I did was I kind of like did a draft of the information that I'm going to need for the building safety case. And then what happens is they've kind of incorporated that into the ERs. So the contractors, when you're giving that information, we make sure that we get that information, and then we're going to recruit like a technical manager to check that information first and validate it before we can sign it off.
Cool. Okay.
Okay, so has anybody else got anything more to say on, well, answer number 2 about information needs of end users?
Dave's still got his hand up.
Yeah, Dave, is that from an old hand or is it a new hand?
He's perhaps not there at the moment.
Yeah, he's perhaps still there. I think it's an old hand.
Can I just add something about BIM when it was first mandated? It's Cliff here.
Hi, Cliff.
Hi. So when BIM was first mandated, there was a 5-year horizon for it to be implemented. And I recall 4 years in, people were still discussing what the acronym BIM meant. So there was a lot of BIM maturity that had to be leveled up in the design and construction teams. And I think we're now on this journey. The idea was that the project information model was supposed to be stripped out and it became the asset information model. Now that the Building Safety Act has come into play, there's no kind of timeline or horizon. It's all been very sudden. And I think we need to take a similar approach to the implementation of BIM, where it unfolded over a number of years. And there was a very useful wedge by, I think it was Mervyn Richards. It had level 1 BIM, level 2 BIM, and level 3 BIM. And at level 1, it was unstructured data. Kind of level 2, it was 3D models and some semi-structured data. And level 3 was integrated BIM. If we had a similar wedge for the golden thread of information, then people could start talking about, well, we're working at level 1, but you're at level 2, so that would help us to understand the information exchanges. And then underneath those levels, I don't know if anyone's familiar with it, there are all the documents and the standards associated that you would need to understand in order to meet those levels. And it kind of puts some framework around everybody maybe moving at different speeds, but towards the same goal.
Yeah, as you say, the BIM level 2, I mean, that was a couple of years back, everybody was talking about BIM level 2. Now no one is talking about it, are they?
Yeah, no.
It's all just BIM.
It's all BIM, yeah, but it was a very useful tool to get everybody on board to understand it. It was basically like a bit of a gap analysis. You could understand where you were on that chart, where you needed to be, and which documents, courses you had to engage with in order to get yourself up to speed and to get it through your supply chain and through your own office and your own team in order to, get everybody on board. It's actually, I think we need to view it as it's a transformational change. I think everybody's starting to realize that now. So each company needs to drive it from the top down.
But it's not easy to target something, to target an end if it's an end of a stage, as opposed to target the end of the whole thing. So it does make sense to have it staged, doesn't it?
I think one of the interesting points that you've just made about that is it is BIM level 2. I think was relatively clear in that it was determining an objective, and the objective was to be able to hand over asset information. That's what BIM level 2. That was one of the main differences. I don't know whether you'd agree with that, Joe, but I think BIM level 2, a key area of BIM level 2 was the production of COBie and the production of the information from an asset management perspective. That was one of the differences with BIM level 1. Now, what we've now done, we've dropped BIM level 2, and we're using the term the 19650 processes, and therefore, to some extent, I think we've lost maybe the goal, which I think is what you're saying, really, Cliff. That we've lost the goal of why we're doing a lot of this stuff. We've dropped back onto the process of how we do it, rather than why we do it. And I think the golden thread and the work obviously that's needed now to satisfy the regulator, that should be focusing us back onto why are we actually doing it, rather than how are we doing it. We need the how, but it's also really important to tie in on the what.
I think that
Shall we
the
move
point on,
to? Sorry, Cliff, were you going to say something?
yeah, it's just that the point I'm trying to make is that we're at the start of a long journey here, and I found that Wedge was very useful as a tool to put up for everybody to understand and sort of like collaborate around. You're going from working in silos to working in collaborative teams and delivering information that's shareable, the right information at the right time in the right format. That's basically what BIM is. It doesn't have to be 3D. So I'm saying that perhaps we should come up with something like this for the asset information model. How are all the property managers and property owners going to get on board? Where's the diagram that shows them the way?
That word again. So many people are saying this diagram, aren't they?
Yeah. Well, I see we've got Emma Swaffer. It's that fire door girl, I think. Are you there,
It
Emma?
is. Yes, I'm here. Sorry, my camera's off because my husband's running a webinar in the other room, and I live in the forest, so I am here.
No problem. So, just a question for you, because one of the I'm just thinking of fire doors as being an example of the need for that continuity of information.
Yeah,
So,
I think really
sorry.
from sort of my perspective, it's an odd one really, because there's various platforms where various information, like you've alluded to, so we've got loose threads that are supposed to be all tied together. So for instance, I've worked in fire door manufacturing. Now latterly, the business that I work for now is in sort of fire door inspections, health and safety inspections, and that type of thing. The information that has gone into the manufacturing space is that they need to be doing something in order to provide the data to the end user of the building. What information that is has not been clarified. How that is to be, put to the end user has not been clarified. So I think the industry collectively itself has gone in and kind of made up their own set of rules. So you've got various platforms that store and hold the data and also transmit the data to the next stage.
Yeah.
But there's not one thread, if that makes sense. And that, from what you're saying, so this is, from potentially design and installation status. But then what happens when you've got occupation, and then you've got subsequent reviews, subsequent inspections? Half of, the inspectors in the country are on one platform, the other half are on another platform, and the information doesn't seem to blend together. So you're getting dead ends of information. So you're getting frayed ropes. And this, I think, is like a critical problem that we've got is, for as a building owner, potentially for one of the local authorities, how do you know what information you're getting is current and up to date? Because potentially there could have been a further inspection done, and that inspector might still be on paper. So,
Sorry, carry on.
And then, tagging the information, going back to your point earlier on about, assets being tagged, and then, but each person and each end user and each inspector tags differently. So how do we know that that information pertains to that door set? And how do we know that that door set's the original door set and not been changed or upgraded, or replaced by a tenant in a leasehold property? So I think going back to the second point, we do need to understand what information is required, and there needs to be those standardized platforms in which you can collate the relevant information. Because part of my career going back a few moons ago was I was in insolvency, so I was a liquidator. And one of the things that I found is that once a business goes into liquidation as well, the information collated belongs to that business. So who owns this data? Who's got responsibility for it?
Yeah.
From a legal perspective, there's huge fines that are placed upon companies and individuals in relation to data breaches. And ultimately, this information might be on the server for one business, and then heaven forbid an insolvency occurs, that information is not worth anything to a liquidator. So there's going to be no resale value. So where does that information go?
Absolutely. Emma, you've summarized it very well. So if I could just, unless anybody else has got anything to contribute,
Simon's got his hand up.
Yeah, sorry. In the local authority where I work, BIM applies to a different department from the housing department. So BIM applies to the people who are building new buildings, whereas the building safety managers now, they're only focusing on the high risk buildings, the ones that were built 50 or 60 years ago. So I agree with George in interpreting BIM as better information management, and also looking at appropriate data sets such as COBie rather than BIM that can go into 6, 7, 8 different levels. But for the building safety managers at the moment who are writing the building safety case reports that are due in April of next year, I think, and I have said, that I don't think they should be distracted by BIM at this stage. So new buildings very gradually will that they'll have some kind of BIM content at the design phase and at the construction phase, and that'll be handed over like the baton in a relay race, so that the building safety managers don't have to write building safety cases and building safety case reports for the buildings as they do for the occupied buildings now. So BIM is completely different for the building safety managers, and hopefully it will come in very, very gradually.
Yeah, so if I could just reference that back to what Emma was saying, I think one of the challenges is that people are perceiving that BIM is going to deliver something that it isn't delivering, and unless we actually make sure that that information is procured at the outset from people, then it won't be delivered. As Joe was saying at the beginning. Now, if I could just come back to what Emma was saying, it's very interesting. As some of you supported us when we were going through the Golden Thread Initiative process, and we've actually gone through each of the different asset types and identified what information is needed by different parties at different points. So if I could just show that, and this is the information that is up on the BIM for Housing website. So can you see my screen okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so basically, Emma, I don't know if you've seen this. I think you probably have, but we've done this for 12 asset types. We've actually looked at this from the HSE's perspective. What risk does a fire door mitigate? What do people do to a fire door to stop it from working? What information is needed about an asset or a fire door to ensure it performs as required? Then what tasks, methods, statements, procedures are required to commission it, install it, and maintain it? The level of competency, and how should we track change? And these are the things that we've done. We've gone through of identifying what the component parts are. So in some cases, compliance teams were arguing they don't want to know this level of detail. They don't want to know what the door closer is. But when we came together, it was clear that people that repairing the doors, they do want to know what the door closer is. So therefore, what we're trying to do is collect the information that everybody needs but then present it in the most appropriate way. We've got a little description there of what a fire door looks like, what the bits are. And then these are the risks that the teams came up with in terms of this is what a fire door is actually doing. And then what do people do to a fire door to stop it from working, like painting over it, for example? We then went through and looked at the information that's needed to do in terms of the information requirements, the specification, information about materials that are used, information about how it should be constructed and installed, and then inspection and maintenance. So there's quite a rich set of information there that Paul McSolly has been working on to try and, that's the sort of thing that we put the RACI against. Forgotten. Yeah. So then we've got the information about specification from a point of view of tasks and procedures, installation, inspection, maintenance, and actually we're publishing something in the new year where we've had a working group looking at fire doors in particular, that we've got some standard inspections coming out, and then something on the competency of the people that are needed. So do you need, for example, BM-TRADA certification or whatever? And then how should information be recorded? I don't know. Has everybody on the meeting seen that before, or am I just? Let me just stop that for the minute. Was that useful, Sean?
Yeah, that's really useful, and I think it comes to another question when you start to look at that and link it back to the COBie construct about how many of those attributes around fire doors would be considered to be type attributes, and how many of those could be considered to be component or instance attributes that are peculiar to the specific installation in a particular point in space. Because that's the next bit that you get to when you start to break that down and start to record it. Where does that information sit in terms of its type and in terms of its installation, specific installation?
Yes, definitely, and that's really the work that we're doing at the moment to try and so we can perhaps pick up on that. We can share with you our progress on that. So coming back to what? Oh, sorry, Paul.
Just jump in on that, because that is one of the biggest issues we have within the industry, is that there is no consistent way that things like designers are applying attribute information, and different software deals with it differently. So whether they're applying it per instance or per type, we've had a scenario where we had a project where the types were just elevational styles. So things like the fire rating and the thicknesses and that lot were all done per instance, which is not the way, when I was generally working as an architect running housing projects, that I would have done things. But because the software Revit makes it easier for us to do it that way, that's the way they did it on the job.
Yes.
Can I just interject in there? Anybody who hasn't seen those documents, the BIM for Housing recommendations on the 12 fire critical asset types, they are on the BIM for Housing website. If you scroll down to the bottom of the first page, the home page, they're there. That's bimforhousing.com. So I see Assumpta hasn't seen it, and I know there are others. So have a look there.
Cool.
So shall we move on to another question now? Another answer now, rather.
Go ahead,
Let's
Richard.
see what we've got.
Actually, just before you move on to that, could I just finally build on what Emma was saying a moment ago, and
Yep.
that is that Emma, what typically starts things off is the specification, and the specification that somebody like Joe, as an architect, might produce is probably coming out of something like MBS Chorus, which will provide a document, but it could easily be 100 pages just for a door, that specifies the information about the door set. Now, then that is often a performance specification that really should tie into the requirement for the door that Emma's providing. But that then has got to be interpreted by somebody that is probably a manufacturer, because that typically is the way I think it's typically done, where the information is provided, because it's not just that particular door, it's also the context in which that door is going to be used. So somebody's got to come up with a solution to that, and it's often the manufacturers who will be providing back a solution that satisfies that requirement. So they're saying basically, we understand the British standards, we understand the ISO standards, we understand building regs. So based on what is in this 100-page MBS specification, this is the solution that we are recommending. That then, you think that was simple, but it's not, because in most cases, fire doors are not provided as a complete product. Even where a door set is tested, there's often a fabricator in place as well. So you might have somebody like Emma. You're working for an inspection company, aren't you? Were you involved with Sentry Doors at one stage?
Yes, I was. Yeah.
Yeah. So would Sentry be did Sentry manufacture complete door sets, or were you more of a fabricator?
No, so they actually manufactured complete door sets. So they used two cores that there's sort of two main providers of fire door cores into the UK, and then they are manufactured. So on site, they were routed out, the glass was put in, they were pre-hung door sets. So they went out as a plug and play system. So they were often used in specification for London boroughs. London boroughs, and also we had some projects up in Birmingham as well.
But so from that point of view, who would have done? Because I experienced this recently, where on a project, what we were trying to do was to find out who'd installed the doors and which doors had been installed, which for a new build, you'd think that would be straightforward under the new regulations. But after 4 months, we've still not been able to find out who installed them. Yeah.
No, and that's the problem. So Sentry would manufacture to that specification, or they would have an existing specification in place that would go out to an installation business. There are some companies that manufacture and install. So you've got one down on the South Coast, you've got Shellen.
Yes.
LFS. So London Fire Solutions.
Yeah.
They manufacture and install. However, the public sector procurement has sort of led and dictated that they want manufacture and installation separate, which I can understand.
So the other point is that you obviously want the door to be tested by somebody like Warrington Fire.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in the project that we experienced recently, Doorplan were the fabricator. They were the ones that actually put everything together. The the door components came from Healthspan.
So Healthspan had the primary testing.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So Sentry Doors actually had, and they have a lot of primary tested products. So they will, I think, for their 12 or 14, have to forgive me because obviously I've been left there a while now. For their 12 or 14 products that they had primary test evidence on those door configurations. And the only problem that you have actually got is the cost of those testing sites. Yes. So to put one door configuration, say, let's take, for instance, a flush face door with a spy viewer, a letterbox, and a handle and a closing system. That was a type 1 flat entrance door. We had primary test evidence on that configuration, but we were often asked to change, the door handles if the door handle that we would be putting on was equal or less in regards to the ingress into the door core. We could use that under like our field test analysis because it was suitably fire rated, but it would not come with primary test evidence. So there's so much confusion and so much cost to put, for instance, a door to test a configuration of a door. You're looking at between £50,000 and £75,000 to burn your own product. But obviously Sentry saw that as a key part of their strategy moving forward. But there are lots of fabricators, like you say, that can't really afford that testing. And it's down to who specifies the door and the end user as to whether they want that primary test evidence or not.
So the reason I'm mentioning it, and I've been exposed to this only over the last 2 or 3 years, and it is quite overwhelming, the level of detail. And when we start talking about test evidence and things like that, certainly until recently, my eyes started to glaze over because I just got lost. But the fact is, it's really important. Mm-hmm. It's really important under this new legislation. And it comes back to the fact that unless we can actually have a proper record of the assets that are installed, not just the fact that a record of the inspection that's been done, then we're not going to achieve any sort of continuity of information through that process. That's where, in part, this question's coming from. So what we need to do in I believe is have as Sean was talking earlier, instances of types of products that the instance being the individual asset that's actually in the building of a type, because by organizing them at type level and instance level, you've got a chance of managing all this data, because it means that you can put things in at a type level, which then applies to every single instance. So if I've lost people in the information management side of things, I apologize, but it really is quite important. And then you can start to tie things back to products. So you've got to, because the products won't stay the same over the life of the building, but the types will. And also probably the assets will, to a great extent, because although you're swapping one asset out or one product out for another, you've still got a fire door in that location that is performing as a fire door. So therefore, the product itself has changed, but the asset itself, the functional asset, hasn't.
Yeah, I think Sentry's come up with a really interesting, I'm not wishing to plug them, obviously I have no commercial interest with them now whatsoever, but they now they're using Door Data Systems as their platform for carrying this information. So in each door that they actually manufacture, they embed a sort of a microchip into that door that has all of the information in regards to the core of that door, who manufactured the core, who worked on the core during the process of manufacturing their factory, what components, for instance, the hinges, the lock systems, and also all of the data sheets pertaining to those door hardware bits. It also has who quality controlled that before leaving the factory, and then ultimately any other technical specification data sheets attached to it. Those bits of information are then handed virtually, so that handshake piece, across to the installation business for them to upload photos in regards to their installation process and any of their accreditation certificates as well.
I think that's a really good example of one of the golden threads that we need to be encouraging. But the fundamental thing there, and I've looked at it because there's several different solutions that are doing that same thing, aren't there, Emma? The problem is with it that we need to make sure is that data needs to be open.
That's the issue. They're not open, and that goes back to my point as to if that business fails, who owns that data and where does that data go?
And you know, from a practical point of view, in a typical building, you may have 2 or 3, or maybe even more, different manufacturers who are using different solutions for installation. So they've got different platforms that they're working with. So if you're an asset manager and you're looking after a building, let's say you're a maintenance company like Mears or somebody like that is responsible for you know, maintaining something, and then, you know, there may be some vandalism or a break-in or something like that, and the door's got to be replaced quickly. How would they know which? Yeah, I appreciate that you know they can use the sensor to connect back to a database, but I think in some cases people have got to subscribe to those databases. So therefore, it becomes quite complex.
Well, I want to move on a bit, actually. We're going down a bit of a rabbit hole there. Sorry, but right, let's look at which follows on nicely from that question, and which was also highlighted, is answer 8, which is provide a digital platform for uploading and tracking asset information, safety information throughout its life cycle, including inspections and maintenance. And before we start, I'd like to bring in Ilona. Are you there, Ilona? Is she there?
She's perhaps making a cup of tea.
Perhaps making a cup of tea. Okay, Jenny. Oh, you are there, Ilona. Hi there.
Yes, hi.
Hi. How are you? How are you guys fixed? You're from
A2 Dominion. That's right.
That's it. Yeah. So what are you using in terms of a platform to ensure tracking safety, building safety information right the way through the life cycle?
So
how much of a challenge is that?
So at the moment, there's a conversation on a higher level, what kind of system we're going to be used. I don't think we've found any particular system as we speak. So we're still kind of in discussion.
So it's certainly a challenge.
Yeah, definitely.
Are you, that being the case, this comes on to actually another answer we've got, which is about interoperability between systems. Are you having issues with that, with various different software systems not communicating with each other?
Yeah, I think it's a common problem in most of housing associations, to be fair. I mean, we've got a couple of systems which is good on a few fronts, but somehow doesn't communicate together, or we don't have like an ultimate system which can do everything we would like to. So at the moment we're running few systems alongside, but again, it's the integrity of it. It's always the issue.
Jamie, how about you? You're with 100 Homes or 100 Houses, sorry.
Oh, hi. Well, that's actually a funny story at the moment. We're currently migrating from one system to another.
Oh, okay. So you
yeah,
solved it.
Kind of. The new
Kind of.
system's not working properly.
Okay, anyone else? Platforms and interoperability.
Just going to say that obviously many organisations run different IT systems, often best of breed for specific operational deliverable purposes. But I think that the IT challenge is to try and make sure that the things that are represented in your electronic model around portfolio have the same definitions across your systems. So if in your finance system you've got, I don't know, something that defines what an estate is or a block or a sub-block, then that definition has to carry through to your other systems as part of your space naming convention. And as soon as you start to harmonise those relationships, then you have half a chance of being able to connect those systems together in some type of common data environment in which you can either work at aggregate level, if that's where you want to work financially, or you can go down and start adding your 2 tiers of COBie, your type and your instance information to your space naming convention. So I think that's the challenge, is how do you define what objects in each system represent, and how do you give them equality across those systems in order to be able to say that this in this system represents the same thing in that system, and then that will help you to have that kind of golden thread of reporting across systems in some sort of reporting or common data environment.
Okay, great. Oh, what I should have said, do use the chat. We record this meeting and produce high point notes, which you will all receive. But we do include the chat in that. So if you're a bit shy to talk, or you've got something to comment on somebody else who is talking, please just pop it in the chat because it won't be ignored. Anybody else? George?
Yeah, I was just going to ask Alan Harrison, actually. I see Alan's there. Where are you from, Alan? Caught him out.
Yeah, we have another actually new. Catherine Doyle. Hi there.
Yeah, I don't
Can't
think your
hear you.
microphone's working properly, Catherine. Can you fiddle with it? Oh, that's better.
Sorry, is that better?
Yeah, yeah.
No problem. Where are you from, Catherine?
I'm from A2 Dominion. Also, I'm sitting next to Ilona. So yes, also in the building projects team, working on some remediation of some of our higher residential buildings.
Cool. Okay.
Well,
Alan's,
welcome. Oh, Alan's alive now, is he?
Yes, he's trying to turn on his microphone at the moment. So
okay, well,
David Sharp. David, are you there at the moment? I think the trouble is sometimes people join the meetings and then they're trying to multitask. So, but David, I know David from the he comes from the nuclear industry, so he's got quite a lot of
got a bit of experience in regulated industry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Should we move on to another question then?
Yeah, let's look at another question. Let me go back to my grid of replies.
before we just move on, the questions that we've got there, what as Richard said, what we're trying to do is to probably turn them into something a little bit more actionable, and therefore really get people's feedback as to whether you think those particular points are particularly important to you. So it might be worth just asking you to, after the meeting, not now, but maybe to look through them and identify for us which ones you consider, what are your top 3, as it were. And it might be when you look through them that some of them are duplicated. Not duplicated, sorry. Some of them are referring to something quite similar. So, for example, clearly we do need the right type of IT systems to be able to deal with this matter. And some of it's going to be process and some of it's going to be culture. So that might be another way that we look at it, Richard.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Alan can't unblock his mic. Just can you do that centrally?
No, I can only mute people. I can unmute them.
Oh, right, okay. Well, Alan, if pop something in the chat, possibly, that would be good. It'd be good to hear from you.
Cool. Okay.
Okay, so where are we?
Alan's listed as a guest, which is odd. Everyone else is not.
No, David Sharp's on as guest as well. Paul is as well.
Teams has a methodology all of its own, and nobody knows what that is. And I speak from someone who has spent the last 2 weeks on daily calls with Microsoft support trying to sort it out. So believe me. Okay, right. So do we want to look at another question? This is quite an interesting one, actually. A requirement, one of the main, identified as a main requirement is to promote honesty and clarity in communication. Now, that's kind of a mare's nest, isn't it? Honesty and clarity. Comments on that one, please.
There's a story behind that, isn't there? I'm not sure what it is.
There must be, mustn't there? There must be, mustn't there?
Isn't there a new competence criterion about integrity?
Yeah, maybe it's about behavioural characteristics. Yeah.
Integrity. Anyone else? Oh, this is.
I think this item really speaks to being open about and not trying to obfuscate issues that you're having within the management of your portfolio, because if you culturally tend to obfuscate stuff, how can you possibly manage that in a safe way for the people that are living in your buildings? So fundamentally you have to be open and honest even about the bad stuff, and then you just have to manage that situation. And I think this is really what Dame Judy Hackett was saying about, the principles of the building safety and this honesty being an open and cultural change in this sector.
That's interesting, actually, because we have another site along with bimforhousing.com, which is blackbox.com, bimforhousingblackbox.com, which was set up as sort of a building, a construction version of the aviation methodology with the black box. They in aviation, I think it's 10 days. If you report an issue that has happened within 10 days, you're not held responsible. And they consider that is a way of getting people to own up and learning from mistakes, where the whole industry learns from mistakes. We've got on the Black Box site a number of sections related to that. People have uploaded, on one section, they've uploaded photographs of things that have been done wrong, not necessarily by them, and said what they've done to alleviate the problem and solve the problem, and in some cases not. We've also got a section which deals with critical events. If something critical has happened, what was it? Who was responsible for it, and how was it resolved? So that's something we take to heart very much.
So it's interesting. So my background is 10, 11 years in aerospace, aircraft manufacturing and servicing, business systems. And I think there's an awful lot that we can learn from the aerospace industry about how to manage and maintain assets, reporting, and things like that. If I was going to pick an area that you could learn a lot from, I would definitely say aerospace is one of those. Because it's purely a safety-driven culture. The end game is to make sure people don't die using your products.
Yeah.
And when things do happen, there's a full and open inquiry into the whys and wherefores and feedback into your manufacturing system to improve your products and your supply chain. So these are the principles, I think, that we will be kind of endeavouring to engender into the things that we're doing around building safety.
I'd really recommend anybody that a fire engineer told me last year about a book called Black Box Thinking by an author called Matthew Syed, and I bought it on Audible and listened to it, and it's fascinating. It's exactly that, Sean. What they do, what he does, he compares the medical industry or healthcare with the airline industry, and just the massive difference between the two. And the key thing, as you've said earlier, or what you just said there, is that they in the airline industry, if something goes wrong, they embrace it, and they try and address it to identify how it can be engineered out. Whereas in the healthcare industry, they literally bury their victims. So they buckle down, and to be fair, the healthcare industry has changed. It's changed from what it's learned from the airline industry. So if you go into a hospital now and you have any type of procedure, the number of checks and things that they do is significant. But I think you're right. The airline industry is a really important. Well, the aerospace industry is a really critical one. I've got a suggestion to make, Richard, that might be an idea here. If we look, the fundamental thing about this question is, are we able to, however the information is being held, what system it's being held in, what processes we're operating, all of those, there's a range of different ways that can be done. But one of the things that's common is, how can we achieve that golden thread of information through the process? And how can we actually identify that it's not working? So that handshake bit. And I'm just wondering whether we might do something around Regulation 38, which is the fire safety information. Can I just show you what I'm thinking here?
Yeah.
So we've gone through Regulation 38, and I didn't even know what Regulation 38 was until 2 years ago, or probably a year ago actually. And everybody keeps quoting at me whenever I say, what information do we need? They'll say, well, we want Regulation 38, which is, it's another document to read. But what we've done, and Paul Bray, who's on this call, will be very familiar with this. Regulation 38, it actually includes the fire safety information, and what we've done is gone through and picked out from that picked out from that the asset types that are referred to. And what I'm thinking is that if for example, you know, we've got Metropolitan, A2 Dominion, 100 housing. If you actually said, right, let's say for example for fire doors or fire stopping, what have we got consistent information that goes through from, you know, do we know where our fire dampers are? Do we know where our sprinklers heads are? Do we know which spaces are being supported by which smoke control systems? And maybe use this mechanism to actually go through and track to see the continuity of information from on your new builds or on existing buildings. So do you, for example, in your buildings, do you know where all the smoke dampers are? The likelihood is you don't. Now, under the new regulations, if you don't know that information, you can't just say that you don't know it. You have to explain to the regulator what actions you've put in place to actually collect it, and also you've then, as a responsible person, all of this information, you have to confirm you've received it, not just for new build, but on existing buildings. And when you appoint a new responsible person, let's say another an FM contractor or something like that, you've got that handshake has got to happen as well under the legislation, where you've got to confirm that you've given the information to them, and they've got to confirm that they've received it. Now, I'm thinking that could be a very practical way of us doing something around this. Is that a worthwhile idea?
Sorry, what in terms of actually asking people to fill out a form or a grid or something about their own organisation?
Yeah.
Sumter.
Oh no, sorry. I think I did put on my hand in error, but because I only started with Metropolitan a few weeks ago.
Sure.
But I was with Peabody before, and they already had like a system in place, and they've collated all that information, and they've added it as part of the regulation 38. You need to provide that information and also state where all these things are on all new builds.
So you've got that?
Yes. So they've kind of like Peabody, coming from Peabody, they have that information now at hand. But like Metropolitan was still trying to get that in place.
Right. Yeah.
Assumpta, yeah.
Yeah.
I know Peabody, and I'd be very surprised if they've got that level of detail.
Yes, we do now, because Peabody has got like a really mega team of building safety managers, and part of the task was to try and find that information. So we kind of like visited all the high-rise blocks.
I agree with that. What I'm saying is, in terms of the individual assets, do you think they know where all the smoke dampers are?
For the high-rises, yes, I could like actually say yes, they do.
Okay.
They know where the dampers are. That's for the high-rises, not for all the blocks, but for the
no.
The high-rises that they do have, they have that level of information.
That's
and it's
fantastic.
just having the resources to be able to find that information as well.
Sure. So what I guess I'm saying is, it's great that we've got, you know, if we've got some people that have actually done it, that's fantastic. That's what we all need to aspire to. But basically by law now, everybody's got to do it. So what I'm thinking is that could be an interesting activity that we maybe collaborate around, because
we're getting some positive feedback on the chat, George, on that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm thinking that we could then compare notes, because it becomes almost like a self-help group, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, how do we structure that, George? Ask people to send out a questionnaire kind of thing?
Yes, I think what we might do is come up with a methodology, and then we can also then engage the right type of steps so that we can go about it. And as you say, we can provide a process with it, with maybe some sort of questions against it as to how that might be done. Now, Alan, let me just read what Alan's just put.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, so Alan Harrison, where are you from, Alan? Just out of interest. So anybody, could you just type into the chat where you're from? Sorry, I didn't mean locally, but are you? What company are you with? Are you with or is Settle the name of the organisation? Yeah. So anyway, what
Fire
Alan's
Safety Inspection Service.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So Alan said all the fire information should be included in the operations manual, but this information always falls short on detail because the person or companies tasked with collecting the information are not fully up to speed with what's required. That's certainly my experience as well. Cool. Okay.
Okay, so George, we're going to put presumably we'll put that together.
Yes.
Some sort of process questionnaire.
And if people have put in the chat who they are that they want to get involved, then we can pick up on that.
Anybody who wants to get involved in that, if you could put your name in the chat, or if you've got any suggestions for how we should do it, put it in the chat, and then we'll get back to you on that. Obviously, we'll do something probably in the new year at this stage, but if you can put that in now, that would be very useful. Anybody who wants to get involved in that.
Joe, we've got a couple of minutes left. Do you want to just explain what you've put in that chat?
Yeah, well, I was glad that the kind of aviation was mentioned, because I was kind of having similar thoughts of kind of the aviation industry or the automotive industry or even the food industry, where there is this requirement for this traceability. And yet within all of those industries, you know, we don't buy a food product and expect the manufacturer to provide us every bit of information about the process of designing that product and making it and manufacturing it. You know, we kind of leave that within the manufacturer's realm. And the same with a car, you know, a car maintenance, you know, a car manufacturer will do product recalls, for example, the same with aviation, etc. So you get that kind of overall picture and that accountability of the product that you make. And yet within the AEC industry, we seem to ignore that approach completely. And what we're kind of saying is, you know, and this is from, you know, myself as part of the design team or the kind of, you know, the CapEx side of things, I suppose, is we need to document every decision that we make and every process that we do and every product that we use. And then we kind of throw that over the fence to the OpEx. And it's hardly surprising that, you know, if that happened when you bought a new car and you got this big kind of bundle of everything, that every thought process that went into that vehicle, etc., it would be chaos, wouldn't it? So it just seems a bit strange to me how the AEC industry is.
Well, sorry, but I think if you're talking about somebody who's consuming a cake, yeah, that would be the equivalent of somebody who's renting a flat, not the person who's constructing it. The person who's making that cake that's got to comply with regulations, they would need that information. And the people in this meeting aren't the people who are eating the cake. We're the people who are making it. So it's slightly different, I think.
Well, no, I don't think you are the people that are making it necessarily. I think you're the supermarkets, aren't you? You're the people who are. It's kind of like the car dealerships who are managing that product as it goes forward to the consumers.
But the supermarkets probably would check the detail.
Well, they have a relationship with the manufacturers, don't they? The same with aviation. You know, the aviation provides a service, so they buy the product, the aeroplane, and then they run that product to deliver a service to their customers. I don't see how that's any different to a housing association, if I'm honest.
I would agree. The only thing I would say, and Sean's got his hand up, so I think I'll defer to Sean. The only thing I would say, Joe, is that the difference is products, and the fact that every building at the moment is a unique construction, isn't it?
Which is flabbergasting, isn't it? Really?
Yeah. Sean.
Yeah, I was just going to say that the key difference between aviation and what I think we're being asked to deliver is that in aviation, the supply chain is responsible for the certificate of conformance for their part of that product. They hold those records, and if you want to trace it back, you go back down through the supply chain to find those records. Fundamentally, what we're being asked to do here as a housing provider or management of housing is to manage the information input from the entire supply chain for the life of the building that we're managing. And that's a huge ask and a massive difference from what aviation is doing, because they compartmentalize that management to the components and the supply chain. They don't expect the airlines to hold that information as the end user of that product at all. And that's really what we're being asked to do here. As the end user of these products, we're expected to manage the information management for the entire supply chain.
And that's what I find strange, because, you know, in terms of, from a designer's point of view, that doesn't happen within the AEC industry. And therefore, you know, with any aviation, you get that kind of loop back, don't you, in terms of if there is an issue with a particular product or a particular service, whatever it might be, that goes back to the manufacturer and they improve their products. So you've got that continual improvement. Whereas in AEC, that doesn't happen. That feedback loop doesn't exist. So we keep kind of making the same product.
Well, speaking of feedback loops, we're out of time. So if anybody who wants to get involved moving forward on the questionnaire and the methodology, just to repeat, please put your name in the chat. Everybody else, I know a number of you are going to be in other meetings over these sessions this week and next week. See you then. Others, I guess we'll see you in working groups and roundtables early on in the new year. So have a good Christmas and all that jazz, and see you all soon at some point. Cheers.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. See you later. Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye.